Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome to another 9.3 preview video. This time I'm going to be looking at the Tier 8 American light tank, the T49, and don't worry, it's not the same as what used to be the Tier 5 American turreted light tank in patch 9.2. That has been renamed to the T67. Now, the T49 is top of the American light tank tree, as we can see, leading on from the Bulldog, the T37, and the Chaffee. Now, without ruining the surprise, I'm going to go on to this in more detail in just a second. The speciality of this tank is to derp its opponents into submission with a 152mm gun launcher on this very fast light tank. This makes the vehicle a complete novelty. Stay tuned, I've got some gameplay coming right up after we take a look at the stats of this tank in the garage. So unlike the RU-251, which leads on from a tank which you'll already have unlocked, to be able to get to the T49 you'll have to go through the T37 and the M41 Bulldog. But I can tell you that's not going to be painful at all, as the M41 Bulldog is a fantastic vehicle, and I'll have a preview coming right up for that on this channel. The T49 will require 101,200 research experience points to be able to unlock it. Fortunately, the top engine is already unlocked on the T69, so if you have the Tier 8 American Medium Autoloader, then that will save you quite a lot of experience having to unlock it on this tank. And for such a high tier gun, it could easily be up towards 50,000, so that's not too bad. While the top radio is used on the M103, the T54E1, or the T71, so if you've got any of the high tier American tanks, you will be prepped and ready for the T49 experience. So the T49 has 1,100 hit points, the same as an AMX 1390. When fully equipped, it weighs just over 23 tons with a 550 brake horsepower engine. Now that means that its specific power is less than the Tier 8 German light tank, the brand new Sparpanzer RU-251. But that definitely doesn't mean that the T49 still can't get around, and it has an incredible top speed limit of 72.4 kilometers an hour. Now the traverse speed is a little underwhelming after you've played the M41 Walker Bulldog, which has 56 degrees a second traverse speed. The T49 has 44 degrees a second traverse speed, which can make it a little tricky to get around your opponents if you've got used to the Tier 7 American light tank. Nevertheless, after you've got used to it, it's only going to be the fastest tanks in the game that you can't run rings around with this T49. Now the armor on the T49 is weak. 25 at the front, 25 at the side, and 19 at the rear. Now the turret armor is slightly better at the front, 38, and it's very well angled, but it's 15 at the side and 15 at the rear. Basically, if you get hit in this tank, you will be losing your hit points very quickly indeed. Upon closer inspection in What Tank View, and something that I've been noticing quite a lot on the test server, is there's quite a thick amount of spaced armor directly over the gun of this tank, 50mm, with 20mm beside that on the mantlet. This should protect you from some HE damage and low caliber rounds if you are hull down, but apart from that, you're very unlikely to avoid any kind of damage in this vehicle. Now, getting on to the treat in this tank, you have a choice of two guns, a 90mm and probably the one that you are all excited about, the 152mm gun launcher. So before we look at the BFG, let's check out this 90mm. I'm not sure quite what to think about this gun once we inspect the ammunition choices. The cheap rounds on this tank, if you've watched my RU-251, will seem remarkably familiar. They have 102mm of penetration with 320 alpha damage. They're kind of high penetration, high explosive ammunition, a bit like Hesh, even though it's not called that. Now, if you're able to penetrate these shells, you're going to do remarkable amounts of damage, and even if you don't penetrate, you're going to do some splash damage to the target, but this is going to be very slight against well-armored targets. If you want to have any kind of reliable penetration in this tank, you need to spend 4,000 credits per shot to get 250mm of penetration, doing 240 alpha damage. And for some reason, there's a choice of fairly cheap ammunition or even cheaper ammunition. But the even cheaper ammunition has such low penetration, I don't see the use of it. If you choose to use this 90mm on the T49, you are really only going to be able to be a tank of opportunity shooting very lightly armored targets unless you want to spend a large amount of money to do 240 damage to your target with the heat rounds. Now this is completely different RU-251 that has, I think, 190mm of penetration for its cheap ammunition with its 90mm, and can work completely the same way using its special high penetration, high explosive ammunition with its third ammo type on that gun. Nevertheless, confusion aside, I think that the majority of players are instead going to use this BFG, this 152mm gun launcher. Now, it certainly doesn't fire quickly at all. It fires 2.61 rounds a minute. But when it hits hard, with 910 alpha damage with its HE shells with 76mm of penetration, or 700 damage with its heat ammunition with 152mm of penetration, or 910 with its premium HE rounds with 85mm of penetration. Now, I'd like to very much highlight, and this is very important, that the heat rounds on this tank using the 152mm are cheap. Usually heat rounds will cost you 4,000 a shot. However, on this tank, even though the caliber is very large, they only cost 770, 20 credits more than the HE ammunition. This means that the T49 and the 152mm on it have been designed to use heat ammunition regularly, and not as a kind of an emergency shell that you need to load and it will cost you more to fire. Premium ammunition, i.e. the very expensive ammunition on this tank, are in fact the high explosive rounds, and they do have a very large burst radius of over 5 meters. So if you simply must damage the target for more than your regular ammunition, the high explosive rounds would do, then you're going to have higher penetration and 1.5 meters extra burst radius. So what we find is this is an absolutely ridiculous gun, capable of shaving off a third of the hit points reliably off any tier 10 medium tank at least, and also about 30% off most of the heavies in the game, such as the lower plates on the 113 or the T110E5 or the FP215B. It should be noted, however, that this gun is not accurate. 0.6 accuracy at 100 meters with 3.6 seconds aim time. Generally with the T49, what you're going to have to do is get into position, know that you're going to have an ambush shot on your opponent, and then come round the corner very slowly. Otherwise, when you get round the corner, you will be aiming there forever. And this is a balancing mechanic for the tank. We don't want to see these vehicles bombing it around at 72 kilometers an hour and then get into position and quickly unload its absolute tactical nuke of 152mm. Or maybe that's exactly what you want to see. Either way, the diversity that this T49 will bring into the game is going to be ridiculous. But having played it quite a lot on the test server, it's not going to be the overpowered tank that a lot of people were thinking it was going to be. It's actually quite well balanced, I feel. And apart from that initial, oh my word, one shot, the fact of the matter is that it's only going to do about 200 to 300 damage to most medium and heavy targets with that HE ammunition. Basically think as if you were using a KV2. You know how much damage the KV2 does to for example, the front of a Tiger II? Certainly not a lot. And with the regular ammunition for the HE on the T49, you're going to have 10mm less penetration than the 152mm on the KV2. And you'll have to fire premium shells to get the same kind of performance as you did on the KV2's regular cheap HE rounds. So apart from that, what do you really need to know? 44 degrees of turret traverse and a very capable scout with 400 meters view range. That's quite enough theory crafting. Let's get in the game and take a look at some of those one-shots. So here we go, we're playing the T49 on Fisherman's Bay, and you can see what kind of tanks people wanted to play on the test server. All light tanks, and what that means is that the HE rounds are going to be very effective indeed. It'll be a lot harder to have this kind of level of performance against armored targets that you might see normally. We're looking for our shots, We take it, but we miss. You can see just how large the aiming circle is on the T49. But one thing that I must mention is this tank does get remarkable gun depression, which gives it a lot of flexibility to poke over a ridge. Unlike quite a lot of derpy guns, such as the one on the KV2. And there we go, that's what it's all about. Over 900 damage done to that tier 8 German light tank. That 251 just lost all of his hit points. Now, quite often for a tier 8 light tank, hey, I've done 1,000 damage. I've had a pretty okay game here, you know. You only have to hit one shell that penetrates in this tank to more or less do your own hit points and damage to the enemy team. But we're not done quite yet. There's a T-54 lightweight. Aiming, aiming, aiming. Bam! And so we hit a Tier 8 Soviet light tank, the T-54 lightweight, which I will be doing a preview of soon. We did, I think it was 350 roughly damage to him there. We hit him in the turret, and the turret armor on that T-54 lightweight is actually quite thick indeed. So that might give you an idea of what kind of damage you're going to do to medium tanks if you snipe them in the turret. One thing this tank is excellent for, however, is taking out its opponents on low health. We managed to pick up a kill there on that 251 that we very likely crippled earlier. Might not be the same one though, he might be still around. So you can see just how bad the aiming time is on this tank, even if you drive around very slowly. And if you've just been absolutely bombing it around, or you turn your turret, then you're going to have to either aim for a very long time or just get completely lucky with your shot. Irrelevant, we can see that our eastern flank is faltering. We try and make our way down to be able to punish our opponents. See a T49 here. Right through the turret, doing 432 damage to him there. And so far we've only fired HE rounds. We haven't needed to fire the heat because of this kind of matchup that we're in. Don't worry, in the next gameplay you're going to see the use of some more heat rounds. But in the meantime, let's just bask in the glory of that 774 damage hit into that Tier 8 American light tank. And boy, does it never gets boring. It really does. It never gets boring. Putting in huge damaging shots into light tanks when you're driving one as well. How mind-boggling crazy is it that a tank with this level of mobility has such an insane damage potential? Now this is a bit of an anticlimax. I couldn't get a fight there against the T49, and I decide that fighting against a Tortoise who was on full health was not in my best interests, and I bug out. So I'll slow the gameplay down here to real-time speed so you can gauge the mobility of this T49. We're going at about 40, up the slope there, along some undulations, now at 50, back up the slope, we're back down to 40. And this is medium terrain, this isn't soft terrain, this isn't like a marsh. But you can get an idea of the mobility of this Tier 8 American light tank. I must say it's quite a good looking vehicle as well. Just give it the quick once round. Apart from that horrible little stubby gun, but some people might quite like that. I think it is a nice looking tank. With a BFG on it. So it might be very easy in this tank to get distracted from the fact that it's got 152mm on it. From the fact that it's a light tank that is capable of scouting away. Here we can see an RU-251 below us, the Tier 8 German light tank. We managed to outplay him on the ridgeline, get shot once by the Black Prince, lose our ammo rack with the second shot, and I decided it's probably not best to go after the RU-251. But unfortunately, our time is up, guys. And an enemy 249 puts in a great shot into us. All in all, this was a fantastic result for us. I'm unable to bring up the post-game stats, but I believe we probably did it between about 2,000 to 3,000 damage. But maybe one of you guys is going to count and tell me exactly how much I did. I hopefully got to show you the capabilities of the T49 against lightly armored targets. How the T49 can use its gun depression to hopefully outplay its opponents and just sneak those HE shots in. And also you got to gauge the mobility of this T49. Anyway, let's get stuck straight into some more gameplay. So now I want to show you some gameplay of the heat ammunition. Now remember, the heat ammunition has 152 millimeters of penetration, the same as the caliber of the gun. When it penetrates, it will do 700 average damage. Here we can see an AMX-50B. One right into his turret. I rolled really high, 789. He misses his first shot. Hits his second, tracking me. Hits his third. Oh, he's got one left. We've got to avoid it. We've managed to reload. Puts another big shot into him for 660, and he misses his last shot. So now he's reloading. And hopefully you guys are getting an idea of just how brutal the rate of fire is on this tank. I think this guy is quite panic-stricken. And fortunately for us, the weak turret armor on the AMX-50B allows us to take out the entirety of a tier 10 heavy tank. Now there's no doubt I got very lucky there. Lucky he missed his first shot, and lucky he missed his last shot. And that I had my full health bar to be able to weather those 220mm shells that he fired at the tank. Now we're going to try and take a shot at the T92. But you can see that if you don't aim this gun, it's completely lucky if it goes anywhere that you aim it. That one ditched itself into the ground about 20 meters before the target. So now we are loading heat ammunition again. But this time the tank is an E100, one of the most heavily armored tanks in the game. Let's see what we can do. We fire one into his tank. We couldn't afford to take a hit. And so we get out of that situation. And immediately we can see that our heat ammunition really isn't very suitable for probably the second most heavily armored, well, at least all-round heavily armored tank in the game. To stand any chance of penetrating, we have to get a flush shot into the back of his tank or his turret. So we come out round the corner. And we're going to line one up the best we can. Right into his back, more or less at a completely flushed angle, and we're unable to go through him. And so this is where the heat ammunition is limited. I would probably be better quit wasting my time trying to penetrate a tier 10 German heavy tank with 152mm of penetration, and just maybe do a consistent 300 damage to him that I could do with my HE ammunition. Now remember, one of the remarkable things about the T49, as I highlighted in the garage, is that these heat rounds are actually more or less as cheap as the HE rounds. It's not going to cost you thousands of credits. And that means that there is a real tactical choice for you to make to decide which ammunition type you need to use to take out your opponents effectively. And I believe that careful consideration of the ammo that you use will really discriminate between the mediocre and the best T49 drivers. Anyway, let's take a look at some more gameplay. So now we join the battle on Mountain Pass, and we're about to make our first move of the game. We have an HE shell loaded. Lower penetration, higher alpha damage, more than sufficient for going through our opposite number. 891 damage and a fire, 100% that tier 8 light tank taken out in one shot. Now we have a Soviet tier 10 medium tank coming for us, and he will be able to rip us apart very quickly indeed. However, we've got HE loaded again. We're going to see if we can do some damage to him. We did 219 damage to that Object 140 there with the HE round. Not very spectacular for a tank that takes over 20 seconds to reload, hey? Nevertheless, damage is damage. The heat shell would have never have penetrated. Maybe I did some module damage to the Object 140 as well. And it's not so much about that example of an HE shell. It's more of the theory that while your HE ammunition is not always going to do a huge amount, doing module damage to tier 10 tanks can just as effectively cripple them or take them out the game. Now we've loaded heat again. I really want to hit home the heat ammunition choice that you're going to have to make. We come round the corner trying to aim at the Object 268. Don't quite have a shot at him because of the gun of the FV215B183. We can see a turret, the cheeks. Unfortunately, we bounce off the cheeks, albeit that they were at a very bad angle. So if I'd fired HE there, I would have probably done about 300 damage, I'd say, to the FV215B183. And I realise this is not a very effective engagement for me for using my heat ammunition, which I'm really trying to do for testing purposes for you guys. In that situation, I would probably stay there, load HE, and just keep splashing my opponents. But I have seen an opening in the map. They've invested very heavily along that eastern flank. And we can see there's a 183 up here, along with the Jagdpanzer 100. Oh wow, this is going to be a tricky one to get through, but thankfully we can get right up behind him and aim at the driver door at the back, which is one of the weak points of the rear of that tank. We go straight through him, shaving off probably about 33 to 40% of his hit points with one hit. Next up, an FV215B183. He hasn't seen us. Right into the side, but unfortunately it didn't go in. That was a poorly aimed shot in hindsight. I needed to shoot one right into the side of his turret. Nevertheless, you can see just how long you have to aim and just how bad the accuracy is with this gun. Look at that, a tiny little movement has reduced my accuracy massively. And how often do you have that long to aim at a tier 10 tank? And how often do you have to aim at the side of a tier 10 tank like that? Hopefully I'm trying to hit it home to you guys just how tricky it's going to be to use this 152mm, but equally just how rewarding it'll be when you can get it to work. So hopefully I showed you guys everything that you wanted to know about the new American Tier 8 light tank, the T49, which does look rather spectacular in HD. I think Wargaming are doing a fantastic job with these new models. The conclusion is that this tank is in no way a conventional light tank. Well, at least with regards to its armament, because really you could play this just like any other scout. It might be a little slower than the others, with anything apart from its top speed limit, but the gun, that 152mm, is really what makes the T49 the T49 and a force to be reckoned with, or at least very much feared. While I can't wait to play this Tier 8 light tank on the live server, it definitely isn't my favorite American light tank. The Tier 7 M41 Walker Bulldog is a tank that I've been absolutely loving. 1,500 damage per clip, albeit that it does take 18 seconds to unload that. It's been an absolute joy to play on the test server, and I will have a preview coming of that and the other light tanks soon for you guys. So anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video or it was just useful to you, please do consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And let me know in the comments what you think about this absolute little beast of a Tier 8 American light tank. Do you think it's going to be too powerful? Or from what I've shown you here, do you think that the aim time and the accuracy are sort of a balancing factor of the vehicle? Anyway, as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic and hopefully I'll see you soon.